Hello and welcome to another episode of the OnReviewCast. I'm the host here, Ash, and today we're going to be talking about something really cool. So, welcome to the OnReviewCast. Today we're looking to look at Interview with a Vampire, the movie, not the TV series. I actually got a chance to take a look at the movie, and we're just going to talk about it. So here we go. This is Interview with a Vampire, the 1994 version. On review.
1994 movie, Interview with a Vampire.
And just like every other episode of the OnReviewCast, we're going to start this beautiful episode off with a rundown, courtesy of fandom. So, Interview with the Vampire, released November 11th, 1994, and directed by Neil Jordan. The stars include Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Kristen Dunst, Antonio Banderas, Christian Slater, and yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, I just decided to, go through this movie and see what the hubbub was all about, honestly, because we've been reviewing Interview with the Vampire on this podcast. So, yeah, I thought that it'd be a great way for us to kind of see what they kind of almost have in store for season one, as well as what they have drawn from or the material they had to work with in moving forward with the actual series. So if anybody that's not seen this movie, please, I encourage you guys, go ahead and watch it. If you don't want it to be spoiled for you, stop it right now. Although it's a 1994 movie, it's old as shit. So, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, something's got to be wrong. No, I'm kidding. People got shit to do. Sometimes they don't have time to, sit around and watch movies like me. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, just jumping right into this movie. So this I found, honestly, was not drastically different, but this I found was definitely a change, I want to say. Definitely a change from what I remember, I suppose. Because as a kid, I did, see this movie. I remember it being on TV, if anything. I don't remember the specifics, or I couldn't remember the specifics of it. But here we go with the synopsis. Courtesy of Fenton. And here it is. Interview with the Vampire is a vampire's best-selling novel by Anne Rice, written in 1973 and published in 1976. The novel, the first feature enigmatic vampire anti-hero Lestat, was followed by several sequels collectively known as the Vampire Chronicles. A film version, The Interview with the Vampire Chronicles, was released in 1994, the one that we're reading today, starring Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Kristen Dunst, Antonio Banderas, Stephen Reid, and Christian Slater. Yeah. And in San Francisco, a vampire named Louis tells 200-year-long life story to an interviewer. Essentially, that's the gist of what happens. But this movie, man, I gotta say, you know what? For 1994, honestly though, I will say this: for 1994, they did a good job with what they had and in terms of what they were working with, and making things engaging. I want to say definitely engaging. There was never a point in the movie where I was kind of like, this is boring, or I don't really. And I mean, if the modern day, if the modern day Interview with a Vampire series wasn't really going on, I think that I definitely still enjoy this movie because it tells there's a lot of interesting things for it. And of course, like going through this, and I don't know if you get the same for you guys, but like let me know. Like I definitely had to kind of like remove myself from the era that I live in, because we live in that time of all this fantastic like CGI, real life, well, making things look more realistic than they actually are. I remember that in those first couple of scenes we saw, Louis being attacked by Lestat, and the whole flying vampire thing again. Holy shit! Ugh. Anyway, if you think it looks ridiculous now in these days, think about 1994 and how possibly that ridiculous that looked. That was just, oof. That was definitely one that was kind of like rough to watch. Well, I mean, like that effect anyway. I mean that was definitely it's kind of like, again, like when you watch older things, or you watch older materials, they can be good, but your brain has to kind of go like, okay, like let's rein in our expectations here, or let's rein in our critical critiques here, because it might not be as great as it's as great as it could be. It's as great as it can be. Not could be. It's as great as it can be for 1994. Some of the things that I had to excuse, and some of the things that were just like honestly just kind of like weird, was the fact that like I think through this they were trying to make it like a horror thing, but also like supernatural thing. It's kind of hard to see where this movie kind of sits. Like they did the thing with the eyes of the statue moving, and Louis could see it. Like there was no point towards that. I think rather they tried to like just shock the audience. It doesn't show his, because if you remember back in the Interview with the Vampire, we had the episodes where he was trying to transition and cycle through the while transitioning. We had a couple of episodes cycling through him actually becoming and making that huge. It was a whole arc about him becoming the vampire, right? And this movie condenses everything down of the books of everything, essentially into this 2-hour event. And while like it's understandable why they would probably cut a few corners, or why they would extend a few things in the series versus the movie, it definitely shows that they were, I don't know, it definitely shows the age of the film, or the material, or the media, I guess I want to say, versus that of one today. It seems like they were just a little bit more focused on the series, on the books in the series, and I think Sam Reid, I think that's what his name is, the one of the actors for the actual television series. I think his name was Sam Reid. I want to say Sam Reid or one of the other actors. We were kind of like, we're focusing more on the actual book, which is interesting because it's we'll get to the like actual contrasts between the movie versus the actual series, but it seems like the series is after watching this, it definitely feels like the series is a little bit more grittier, a little bit more raw. Yes, it's older, but it's still the same material. I feel like and it feels like it was more in your face and more honest in terms of like what they were trying to do, I want to say. Yeah, it seemed more believable and things made a little bit more sense. And obviously, again, like in terms of like pacing wise, a movie versus a series, like it seems a little bit more well put together. But that might be because of the time, right? So, who knows? Yeah, like just the fact that like it's just, like I was saying, like certain special effects, like how he flew and etc. Wasn't like less believable, but some of the things that were actually believable though, believe it or not, was the drinking of the blood, like the blood, all the blood scenes and the goriness wasn't half bad actually for the 90s. I mean, I'm not really a agoraphobic like some people I know. I'm not really a horror or gore fan, but I mean, again, it was like it was good enough to be believable. The aesthetics of the time in which they were in, I think he says like 1912 or something like that, and the fact that they were, some of the contrasts were like this version of Louis is a plantation owner, aka slave owner. Some shit that probably wouldn't have been too attractive or wouldn't have painted him as a antagonist very well in this day and age, which is why I don't know if it's something I question if they actually changed up in the books, if they really did change it up in the actual television series, and they made him a slave owner versus the pimp that he was in the beginning of the story, if you guys remember. But the accuracy of this, him having the slaves in his house, and them actually rising up and having a revolt, that was actually kind of sort of interesting, because like I feel like even Hollywood at that time, they kind of knew that like all these slaves are looking kind of, you know what I mean? I was like, it's looking kind of like, it's not a good look, right? It's not a good look over it. And like, so I say that like it's not a good look because like Hollywood and America in general, America's greatest shame, they like to dissuade away from that. So the scenes with the slaves and them actually revolting and etc., it was relatively quick, the things that that situation and those few scenes. But I still thought that it was kind of interesting that they had the boldness to actually go for that and actually say that, hey, the honesty with it is like, this is what was happening back in the south of the Mississippi. There were slave owners and there were slaves, and sometimes they would revolt, and and sometimes their master would go crazy and become a vampire. It would be a vampire, and that's essentially what it was. But I will say, I will still maintain that it's a more interesting take, if I'm being honest, from the perspective of Louis when he is a man of color. So yeah, I mean, in this version, Lestat and Louis are both white men, and in the previous television version, they're an interracial couple of when Lestat is white and Louis is black. But it's one of those changes that I wonder also now that I've seen both of them, that which one was more compelling, like to be inside of the book, of them actually starting out from. Because it was kind of like in the movie, it was kind of like Lestat just like came over to hang out with him, to be his companion, to be his best mate. He's over there to be his best mate. To be his best mate. I don't know, English accent. To be his best mate. Yeah. Something. I don't know. It's none of this. Also, Lestat didn't have any kind of accent in this. Not that he had any kind of accent within this like movie. Something I also noticed. He gave implications that he was from a different like area than that of Louisiana, Mississippi, where they had mentioned that this story is basically taking place where it did take place. The only thing is, he didn't really seem. The only thing European about him, or very like foreign, I guess, about him in terms of from an American's perspective, I would assume, is the way that he kind of dressed and kind of sort of carried himself. He didn't really have an accent. I don't know. But I did think that was kind of interesting as a contrast from the books relative to the movie. But yeah, something of note, I guess, was the dialogue. Oh, gotta talk about this. So the dialogue within this movie, right? I noticed something that was kind of enjoyable to watch, and something that was kind of cool going through this is that they did pick things right from the book. And so that's why I was saying, like, this movie isn't like, at the end of the day, I think I do prefer the series rather than to the movie, just because it's so, I mean, I feel like it's more accurate. I haven't read the actual books, but I wonder if we could actually get someone to actually, if you guys want to comment, like if you guys have if you've done all three, or if you've done one of them, you've seen Interview with the Vampire, or the Interview with the Vampire series, the AMC, or have you seen AMC's Interview with the Vampire, you've seen the movie, and you've read the books? That's more of an ideal person, but interact with us on the socials and let us know if you've seen all three, which one's more accurate towards the book, honestly, because they're both very entertaining pieces of media. But and they seem to follow a very similar dialogue. A lot of the lines that were said throughout every once in a while, every little line, every once in a while would relate back to the television series, which in reality, just I assume, lines up with the book. So specific lines are directly taken from the book, like that line that was Lestat and Louis, and Lestat is actually talking to Louis, and he's like, "Kill them if you must, but kill them, and have no doubt in your mind that you are a killer, Louis, right? You are what you are." And the whole conflict of, I guess that was one of the main themes of the actual, overlining story overall. And Louis struggling with becoming a vampire. But I didn't really focus on that too much within the actual movie. But they did focus a lot about it in the series. But it is something that they do mention, and they do have like a few scenes about how Louis is struggling with the fact that he cannot be this inhumane thing, this killer that is a vampire that is like, Lestat, and later on Claudia. But yeah. I liked how that both of the sources respected, to some degree, Anne Rice's vision of this material. So that was pretty good, and it was actually sort of actually a little comforting to know. And so a little bit more of the differences too within this story. This might be talking about it maybe a little bit too early, but I want to talk about the introduction to Claudia, really, and an introduction to the characters as well, the contrast and the comparison too. I definitely liked the introduction to Lestat. So we'll go one by one. I definitely like the introduction to Lestat better in the series. When he's like in that church and he's walking through, and he's like walking through, and he's like being like he's like actually showing, I think that because like the pilot, he was actually showing all the strength, the power, and ferocity that is the vampire. I think that was just their opportunity and their moment to shine and basically go ham with it, and it's just to go off really. And he does this by punching a hole through a guy's face. I thought that was actually really, 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 really cool. It's just something that I preferred rather than I think Lestat just kind of attacks Louis out of nowhere. He's drunk with this whore, and he is about to go. I don't know if he's going to go fuck this bitch or like he's about to he's gonna go do something with her. I don't know. Probably he was in the middle of it, but I just know he's just drunk off his ass, and he's probably about to go do that. And then what happens is that Lestat legit just straight up attacks him, and he whispers in his ear, "Do you want a choice of living or dying?" And then he leaves. That's another thing in this movie. The thing versus the movie versus the series, the pacing is so friggin' weird in the movie. I definitely prefer the pacing within the. I definitely prefer the pacing within the series versus the movie. Something that I noticed that it's some things jump all over the place and they don't kind of make sense. As again, I take it up to the time at which they were actually shooting the movie, and as well as the era in which they were shooting the movie as well. But yeah, Lestat. I mean, yeah, the way how he leaves, he attacks Louis. Lestat attacks Louis, gets into the ground, drains him from blood a little bit. Louis watches the sunrise, and then out of nowhere, Lestat comes back, drains him again, and somehow and cuts him and then transforms him into a vampire. A lot less again, I understand it's condensed from a movie, but a lot less intricate reasoning, and even though he says it's a choice, he didn't really. I don't know if he really. I didn't really. I might be wrong on this, but I didn't really see him consent to, becoming a vampire. As so much we go through a more detailed transition within Louis and Lestat before they have. Before Louis actually goes ahead and transitions into a vampire. The way how we meet Lestat and the way how we meet Louis, like I said, much better inside of the series. But the way that we meet Claudia, now this is something to be contested, I think, or to actually to be kind of talked about a little bit here. The way how they introduced Claudia was definitely, and I want to talk about this because it's definitely different than what they did within the series. What they did within the series was that Claudia was in this building, right? And Claudia was in this burning building. And Louis, as a result of some actions that it was very tied towards what Louis had done, but Claudia was in a burning building. Other than that, he didn't have any ties or any connections toward Claudia at all. He didn't do anything to her. He didn't have any. He didn't know her from any kind of perspective. But what happens is the fire breaks out. Louis goes into this building. He saves this girl. He brings her back home, and he tells Lestat to actually save her, right? Give her the dark gift or turn her into a vampire. The only thing is, in the movie, right, they made a different choice, and I wonder which one of these is actually real. They did something different where Louis is the one who actually bites her, right? He finds her and finds Claudia, and her mom is dead now. And I don't know if it was out of necessarily pity or that he wanted to have mercy on this child, and that was not orphaned, I suppose. That he, in the movie, he goes ahead and he hugs her, gives her a hug, while Claudia clings to her mother, who's now passed away, and he bites her. And after biting her, I guess she dies or is in the middle of dying, kind of, sort of. And Lestat actually catches him in the act of actually, draining this girl of her blood. And Louis is so ashamed that he has to run away. And he goes into the sewers and with the rats and he starts to essentially feed on them. And it's real side quick real side thing real quick that happened when Lestat had found Louis doing this. He takes the dead corpse, Claudia's mother, and he starts dancing with it. I just felt that I just need to mention, I felt that was a very vampiric thing. I feel like it was a very vampiric thing to do. Do you know what I mean? I was very much inside of Lestat's character to mutilate the dead and make fun and poke fun at it. Let me know in the comments what you think. I thought that was very Lestat-like. Tom Cruise did a very good job of playing Lestat there and making it seem like, yes, this is how the insane, crazy, psychotic Lestat essentially would respond, or how he would react to this. And it goes on, but no, sorry, it goes on. And it going back to the actual introduction of Claudia though. So again, Louis bites her, goes into the sewer, runs away, and then Lestat is actually the one who willingly takes her home and decides to bring her as a gift for Louis, to tell him that, hey, look, you need companionship more than just me. As opposed to the series where that was not the case at all. A very strong point of contention between these two was kind of like Lestat was very afraid that Louis and her were gonna team up against him, which they did. And he didn't necessarily want to introduce a vampiric child into their, family, their little family that they had. And I thought that was an interesting choice. And I'm not confused, but I'm wondering really strongly now which one followed the book more. They say the TV series followed the book more, but I mean, really, I don't really know. In terms of scenes, it makes sense. The pacing, it makes sense that the series did more following towards the book. But who's to say which one followed the book more now? Because I just thought it was very interesting that that choice was made by Lestat willingly to give Claudia the gift, because it was a big point of no, Louis, we shouldn't do this. She's dying, et cetera, she's a child, blah, blah, blah. And then Lestat, either way, at the end of the day, it seems like Lestat transforms her, and Lestat is the one to transform her to make her into a vampire. That's the point. But I just found it interesting, how that actually happened. And if you're asking me, honestly, I think that her transformation. I think that her transformation and her the choice that they made to actually have Lestat kind of involved in her creation and her receiving the dark gift, I think that that's a little bit more interesting. I think the movie did it actually a little bit better in that case. Just because, I mean, the series made it seem Lestat is this the worst possible thing ever, when realistically they all were killing people, and they all, in the movie and in the series, they all were killing people. They all were monsters. They are little demons doing these wicked things. The only thing is that they tried to paint Louis as more of kind of a saint. Then they do that a little bit in the movie, because they say he actually feels bad about some of his murders and some of his kills. And in the series, they say that, okay, Louis doesn't drink human blood anymore. He doesn't kill anymore in the modern day Interview with Malloy. However, it makes more sense that Louis would have had some kind of hand. Also, it makes more of a connection towards with Claudia, if you think about it, in that initial building of their family, their little vampiric family, that he would have some kind of role or some kind of hand in actually bringing Claudia to into this vampiric like culture, this vampiric like culture, and this vampiric like I also want to say community or this transition. But I think that it just makes more sense. It just makes more sense, and it makes that connection, I think, stronger of when she starts asking the questions like, well, why was I made? Who made me? And it tells a little bit of a better story of with him being more involved in some way. In the series, he was like passively involved. You know what I mean? Because the fire he didn't really harm her in any kind of way. The fire was his fault. Yeah, he did. It was his fault. He caused it. But it wasn't a direct cause of him just like slipping up and being like, I slipped up and I fell on this child who got close to who I was trying to comfort at the time, and I bit her by mistake. And like, that's a little bit more of an interesting story to me. I don't know why. But yeah, I also in the movie I found it very interesting how apparently vampirism makes your hair curly. Because if you look at that scene where she's like in the bed and she's like dying, I guess from his bite, and he's like, she's like, oh, I'm like gonna die, just before like Lestat feeds her blood. Like she is straight up, her hair is straight up flat, and then like they do the transition where she becomes a vampire and they show it in real time, and her hair is like fucking curling. Like, I just thought, I don't know why, I thought that was funny. I thought that was hilarious. It's like, so vampirism curls your hair. Interesting. Yeah, another reason to become a vampire. Another good one. But yeah, something also like, I guess a little bit of a contrast within this movie versus the series kind of thing. So in the movie, if you guys haven't seen it, Claudia is okay. From what I remember in the series, they described Claudia as being what, in the body of a 12-year-old, right? 12 or 11-year-old or something like that. I want to say 12. Definitely preteen age, over the age of 10, like within that range. But not too much into the teenage years quite yet, I think. Or just about getting there, maybe like 12 or 11 or something like that. And yeah, in the series, they portray her more closer toward, I don't know why, maybe and let me know if I'm wrong on this, or maybe I'm way off on this, but here's my opinion on it. She looks so much younger, and Kirsten Dunst is a child. I get it. She looks like an actual child. I don't know if she's supposed to be written this way. But she looks like an actual child in the movie versus the series. And I think the reason for that is because it's easier to make children look like it's easier to make adults look like teenagers. That's why I think they bumped her age up a little bit versus or in terms of like her looks too, they bumped her age up. It's easier for adults to look like teenagers than it is for teenagers to look like kids. Kids are eventually going to grow up, and they're going to grow out of things, and they're going to grow up, they're going to grow out of things. And just from an acting, hiring and acting perspective, or casting perspective, it makes sense that for a series for a long haul, and they don't necessarily know how many episodes or how many years they're going to really use the Claudia character. Because if you've seen the movie, hopefully you have at this point, Interview with the Vampire, the 1992 movie, we know the fate of Claudia, what happens with her. But they could do something completely different with the series. We don't know. And hopefully you've seen all of the series as well. The spoilers alert, she's still alive. She's still doing her thing in the series. So that contrast, I think, was more of a productional change, and I wonder if that is also a book versus a series kind of thing. Who got it more right? Who got it more right? Was it the book or was it the movie that got her portrayal or her illustration of how she looks more correctly? So thing I found funny was just like when she's like she has all they did a good job with showing the perspective of Claudia and her being a child, and I thought that was actually pretty cool. And if anything, if I'm being honest, they did it a little bit better than in the series with her. In terms of like, and Kirsten Dunst fucking nails this role. I'm not gonna lie. Even as a child, she was like, it's just very, very believable, very, very believable, and even the lines that she delivers are very, very strong. And she's just in it. And for a kid, she's so even at that age, she's just so very talented. You know what I mean? She nailed the role of Claudia. She did it very, very well. Very hard shoes to live up to fill, honestly. The actors for the actual television series, like, she did a good job too. Honestly, like, she did a great job. But wonderful job by her. But like, this is a tough act to follow. I don't know. That's a fucking tough act to follow. It's Kirsten Dunst. She played. If I had remembered this movie a little bit better, I might have been like, Kirsten's performance was way better. Of Claudia, portrayal of Claudia was probably way better than the one on television. But I think, like, at this point, because I maybe haven't seen it in so long, I saw this one second. It's more. I think they were on. You can't. Wait. I don't know if you could, it's very fair to actually also compare them, because these two actresses are at two different ages. Like, Kristen is actually a child here, and she's acting, and she's doing a great job at bringing out the Claudia. The Claudia that was in the series does a great job, which I can tell that she's a different age. Do you know what I mean? And she is a little bit more professional. But ironically, I think that they're on the same level. I think, but from an age perspective, like, there's not a lot of, like, she looks like she's like, what, 7, 8 here, and she is killing it, dude. She's killing it in this movie. Very, very, very strong acting capabilities from even as a child at that age, and that says a lot to her as an actress, but also I guess it also kind of says in reverse again. It also says something about the actual series actress as well. She was good, but she was just good. She's as good as a 7-year-old, you know? But I mean, at the same time, Kristen's pretty fucking awesome. So, all right. So, but moving on, I thought something I thought was like really, really funny was that, like, again, like, they portray Claudia a little bit better in the movies, I feel like, because in the series, Claudia has interactions with people outside of Lestat and Louis. She has like a little moment with her boyfriend, and she has quick meetings with people outside of that circle, like Bruce, you know, in the vampire she meets, and she met Louis' family that one time. Yeah, that's in the series. But in the movie, we get to see Louis' family isn't even talked about at all in the movie, by the way, just a side note. But in the movie, we get to see Claudia I just feel like it's more of a kid. You know, like, as a kid, you do like kid things. Like, so when you're feeling like people around you, you get to see, like, they treat you more as a kid. That's why I feel like this portrayal of Claudia as a child maybe might have been more close to the books, because it's like more believable. They showed more of her in her innocence of a child and things that you just go through as a child, you know, like being comforted by a parent, and they showed her taking advantage. I think that's what it was too. They showed her taking advantage of her vampiric nature, along with her the physical body of a child that she's in. So it kind of made sense. We didn't really see a lot of that though in the in the series, it was kind of like, oh, I'm a child vampire now, and I'm creepy and I'm weird, and I just attack people randomly. We don't necessarily. We saw a little bit of it when she went on that date, and the guy was kind of like worried about how old she was and etc. So from that perspective, we saw a little of that. But like, I'm talking about like things about like just being like a child, right? Like, because like again, like in the series, she's more of a teen. She's writing in a diary. She's wondering more about boys. She's blocking out her dad when her dad tries to communicate with her telepathically. Also, something that was very weird in this movie. There's telepathy, but it's rarely talked about. It's not really as strong or as poignant in piece as a focus thing in the series that it is in the movie. But getting back to Claudia. So again, I feel like we get the essence more of a child with the movie, because in the movie, she, like normal child things that you do, like curling up to your parents when they're in bed or while they're sleeping, and you want to curl up with them and you want to be with them. Piano lessons, like when that guy is having the piano lessons with her, and he scolds her and he's like, "Watch your thumbs," or whatever. And Kristen kind of looks at her. I don't know, that shot was so funny because Kristen kind of looks like, "Well, dude, what the fuck? I'm a fucking vampire. You just hit me? You out of your mind?" Like, he's like, "Pop, watch your fingers." She's like, "What the fuck?" I thought that was kind of funny. Again, and it was kind of interesting to see her perspective. Again, how she deals with how she has these tantrums as a child. It's kind of funny to see her perspective as a child, as an actual child, rather than not as a teen, and how she would deal with the situation. And again, she does the Ripper kind of thing from the Vampire Diaries, where she kind of leaves them dead, sitting up, and the guy falls over while he's like playing piano, teaching her to play piano, and she kills the doll maker to get to one of the most expensive dolls. Like, just like petty dumb shit like that. Like, we didn't really get to see a lot of that. Like, we didn't really get to see a lot of that, like juvenile ness within Claudia. There were some moments within the series where like she attacked that police officer or whatever, and but again, this entire time, Lestat is being Lestat is kind of fed up with her. But we're not fed up with her, but like more or less like kind of like tolerating her. That's what it is in the series. But in the movie, Lestat actually likes her to some degree. In the beginning, it's all fun and games. It's nice, and they all seem to get along very, very well. It's less disdain within the movie than it is in the series. And again, I know the actors from the series said it's more like the book. They're doing it like the book. That she was. That Lestat would be less tolerable of her, but I don't know. It sells the idea more that they are this happy family. They were truly this happy family of vampires. When Lestat had accepted her for her being her. Yeah, I thought that like Claudia, it's crazy. I enjoyed both Claudias. I did. But I'll just say this then. Kristen Dunst is killing it as this character. She killed it as the character of Claudia. Very believable, very very entertaining, more interesting to watch her be more of a juvenile in terms of doing childlike things. Even the freak out she has that she's like, I'll be like this forever, I'll look this way forever. Like that was so. She has a freak out in the movie, in the series as well. Like that whole line about which one of y'all gonna fuck me, and it's not as graphic or as in your face as that in the movie, but it's that whole question of that's why I said I feel like her role in this movie, her character in this movie, they covered it all. Claudia was such a centerpiece because they covered it all. They covered her being a juvenile. They covered her questioning her existence and her what she is and what immortality actually really means to her and why asking these bigger questions as to why she was made. Things they did in the series as well, but they just kind of expanded upon that a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, the series is amazing. Watch the series. But I just think that they handled Claudia a little bit more. She had 2 episodes in the series. And the movie, it feels like she was the bigger overarching arc of a lot of things that was happening. But they only had a few minutes. It's weird because they only had a few minutes to get us to know Claudia with the character in the movie, and I feel closer to the character in the movie than I do I feel like I really know the character in the movie rather than I do in the show. Do you know what I mean? Like that should say something in itself. I feel like maybe there's more of a depth in her character in the movie. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but great job by Kristen. All around amazing. The quote unquote. No, I want to talk about real quick. Some of the other major differences, real quick. Let's talk about that then. Some of the other major differences within this movie versus the series is that like they introduced a lot. They modernized it to a degree where they didn't holy fuck, they didn't Supergirl it. Because we don't need any of that shit. Supergirl's an awful show. Yes, I'm pushing that right now. Supergirl's an awful show. I've seen all of it. It's bad, but they didn't modernize it in such a horrible way. But what they did was, in terms of modernizing it, I mean, they're adding more people of color as the forefront and more people of color as the stars. Like Louis Black, Claudia's black, and Lestat is white. That whole the differences within that alone was actually very interesting to watch, because if you watch the movie, it's all whitewashed cast, and the whole cast is kind of whitewashed, and it's at the time, I get it was 1994. It was at the time of that's when Hollywood wasn't very diverse. I get that, but I just wanted to make a note of that. It was more interesting to watch, just from a perspective of that, to see that there were different there are different backgrounds within the actual series. Because that was a little bit of a culture shock, if I'm being honest, to see there's no diversity within this. It's there's Armand, but we're going to get to him in a second. But that's not enough. But yeah. The whole scene at the end of season, which is I found very interesting, the scene at the end of season 1 within the series, they actually played that out within the movie, but it was kind of sort of done in a different way, where he drank from the twins. There wasn't a whole big party. Claudia just presented these 2 twins to him, and he drank from them, and he was left to be drained by Claudia and not Louis, like in the series. So in the series, Louis cuts his neck as he drinks the laudanum that's within one of the boys, and it paralyzes him because he's drinking dead man's blood, right? And both in the series, he's poisoned, and he comes and he cries out for Louis. So in the series, Louis takes the blade and cuts his neck to drain him of blood. In the movie, Claudia takes a blade and drains him of his blood. Very savage, by the way. Still amazing. Amazing acting by Kirsten Dunst. So good. and that leads to Lestat being quote unquote finished. For the first half of the series, and that's how it happens. Similarly, in the movie as well, and he's essentially drained. And I just remember just having that same thought as I had within the series, is that he's just draining the poison or the dead man's blood out of his body. If he starts to drink blood again, he'll be fine. And they prove that. They go a step further with that, because that's just the first half of the movie. That's just the first hour of the movie. Because he comes back. He does come back, and he starts to attack Claudia and Louis, and there's a little bit of a scuffle, and he's not looking the best. He's still able to try to attack them, and he wants to kill Claudia. Louis is the one that actually sets him on fire, and that's important for what we get into next. For sure. But they don't actually show that in the series. They don't actually show Lestat being set on fire. They say they push him onto the trash, and he goes in the trash and he eats rats. And realistically, we can put 2 and 2 together that, hey, this dude's probably still alive with rats. Now, something interesting that happens. So they leave. It happens kind of sort of the same way. The only difference is, instead of chaos happening within the streets of Louisiana, it's more calm within the series. Louis and Claudia still leave on this boat to go travel. They didn't really give a destination, but eventually they find this. They travel about. They're looking in search for people like themselves, and this is kind of like leads into what they're probably going to do for season 2. I gotta get a good, and this gave me a little bit of a glimpse of an idea of what they're probably going to do with season 2. They find themselves in Paris, of all places, and they're spoiling themselves and giving into all of the debauchery that comes along with being a vampire. They've been killing and doing all these things and drinking blood and et cetera, et cetera. But in Paris, in the streets of Paris, this is where Louis actually meets the vampire called Armand. And before he actually meets Armand, he meets a vampire called Santiago. And Santiago is essentially mimicking him, all his moves and everything, and how his mannerisms and his moves. And it's like essentially like a mime. He's miming him. And at first you think, when you meet him, it's like, okay, well, who the hell is this dude? It's kind of like, he says he's a vampire, like Luke says he's a vampire, but like in my head, I was kind of questioning, like, is he a vampire or is he just like fucking, crazy, or like a familiar or something like that? You know what I mean? Like a vampire helper human. But then he starts doing these tricks, like he's walking on walls and flying and stuff. And Santiago is weird, a weird looking dude. But and he's weird overall. But the thing I wanted to point out, I think, is the showmanship of all of this. I just felt like I was watching like a show, and that's exactly what happens next. They go to the theater. It's a theater. They go to the theater after being met by the vampire Armand within the streets of Paris, because Armand's kind of like Santiago, and Santiago disappears. He's also a really, really fast vampire. And he talks to him, and they have a brief conversation about I think vampirism, and then he invites them to the show, and they go to the theater, and they put on this show with this live girl. Again, like live. I think it was a victim on the stage, and they drank from her, and it was a theatrical show of vampires, and it was definitely something. I'm not going to talk too much about this because definitely for time, but also more or less for not to spoil anything we're going to probably see in season 2. But I think season 2 is going to definitely have some kind of elements of the theater involved within it. And because in this movie, they introduced Armand as the leader of the coven, what we talked about last time in the last episode too, of the series. But he's the leader of this vampiric performing arts community. That's what it looks like, with a bunch of actors, and a bunch of actors that are kind of like at his like beck and call, and he kind of like commands and controls them. But he also he just seems like a showmanship. He's a showman. He likes to put on performances. So I think you can expect a little bit more from that. And I think we're going to expect a little bit of more of definitely of Santiago as well. That actual guy who we first met, because he's the one who when they meet and Armand tells him about who they are, how they're this coven of vampires, and how he just talks about vampires with him, and they feel some kind of connection towards one another. And Claudia becomes concerned about this, but because Claudia kind of senses that they want to go to one another and be with one another. Interpret that as you may, I guess, as well, because something also in the movie we notice is that it's a little less gay, it's a little less queer than the actual series. In the actual series, they're out and about and proud that they are, homosexual vampires. They're not pointed out in everybody's faces in the community, because they're definitely not ready for that, except for like the last episode, which is the exception, because that's a whole debauchery episode. But it's definitely apparent that they are sexually involved and sexually attracted to one another. Lestat and Louis I'm talking about in the series versus that of the movie. Because in the movie they just talk about companionship and being friends and etc. But it's kind of like, yeah, okay, come on, guys, you guys are gay. Like you guys are fucking. Like, come on, like you're yeah. But yeah, that's another contrast and difference within the movie. Now, just to wrap this up, the pacing of this movie is just so weird. Towards the end, this movie, Claudia is found a woman who had lost her child and who named Madeline, and she was trying to become Claudia's like vampiric mother and get Lestat to transform her and turn her. And Lestat turns her, and right when she's transitioning and becoming a vampire, Santiago's group of people comes in. And now you might be asking, like, Santiago, what? Why is Santiago's people here? Well, like, apparently one of the rules within their coven is to not, or the rules overall as a society is to not kill another vampire. You can't kill another vampire. And they come and they kidnap Louis, and they take Louis and they put him in a box to kind of rot in the wall for all of eternity, instead of actually killing him. So he could suffer in this box while he listens to the death cry of Claudia and Madeline. And that kind of just reminded me of some kind of like Vampire Diary stuff, where Klaus used to put people in walls who were vampires, and used to just like keep them there for all eternity so they could just cry out and wail. And he used to live within his house and suffer within his house for years. Just because Klaus is a sadistic bastard, and he just wanted them to suffer, and he didn't need to know that they were suffering. Yeah. So so Santiago goes after Madeline and Claudia, and he puts them in this well where they can't escape. And the daylight comes and turns them to ash, essentially. And it looks like, for the most part, then this is where the movie gets a little, I feel like, again, the pacing and the explanation behind this wasn't really very clear. It looks like Santiago acted alone, almost like kind of in this, because Armand was the one who kind of saved him from the coffin. And Armand was there when, Louis was asking for him and was like, what the hell's going on? Why are we being attacked? They didn't really give us proper explanation for that. Not really. So I still don't quite understand why Claudia had to die in that way, what she did. Why would they even attack them that way? Why were they sentenced to this death of daylight if they're all supposed to be vampires? And I think he kind of sort of explains it. He kind of Armand kind of explains it, and he's kind of like, oh, because of her age and because of the fact that she's weak and she's not supposed to be born or something like that. But Santiago was like the main one who looked like he was spearheading it. So and he just looks like with so much pride in his face that he's done this, and it causes Louis to go on a rampage of revenge, essentially, and essentially burn down the theater and decapitate and murder a whole bunch of vampires. And then Louis escapes with the help of Armand, essentially. And that's just summarizing it. But it's a very engaging few moments of it. And he tells Malloy that's essentially like the end of the story, and they go on. He meets Lestat in a very which didn't make sense to me. Again, the pacing is weird. Like, it didn't make sense. It was like 19, and it was a time skip where it was 1983, and Lestat had been found in this abandoned building. And he was in this abandoned building for a while, and a helicopter comes by that was so bright. Like, Louis finds him in this abandoned building by himself. And then a helicopter in the building goes by and shines a light into the building. And Lestat freaks out about seeing this light. And he thinks it's so bright like the daylight. And Louis explains to him it's like artificial light. Like, why does he not know the technology? Where has he been somewhere? Really, does it take a vampire that long to heal from fire? Maybe it does, because they were saying stuff like fire supposed to kill a vampire, and it didn't kill Lestat. So I mean, like, I don't know, maybe you're right, maybe like I'm right, I'm sorry. Maybe it takes the vampire longer to actually recover from those wounds, and it took him like over half a century to actually recover from fire. The scene where Louis attacks Malloy in the apartment is actually significant too. We'll talk about that real quick, because he drops him after attacking him for like 5 seconds. And they kind of talk about this in the series, where he's kind of like, I won't be there to save your life this time in San Francisco, like last time in San Francisco. Apparently what happened was Armand stopped Louis from killing Malloy, and he was able to get away with the interview notes and media, but to only be tracked down by Lestat, actually, instead of Armand. And Lestat actually, feeds off of him, and he tells him he's going to give him a choice, which is kind of contradictory to what we see in the series, because in the series we see Malloy is an old man now, so obviously he didn't take the choice or the option of becoming a vampire, I guess, that night. But also it leaves room for actually wondering, like, what happened on this bridge exactly when Armand found him, and what exactly, how did he get away from Lestat? Does Lestat just let him go? Does he know Lestat now? And is this why he was kind of calling him out on his bullshit towards the end of the story? When he was like, oh, we just left him out in the trash. We just threw him out to the trash, and he was dead at the end of the series. because clearly he wasn't dead. If Malloy actually met Lestat in this very chaotic car scene towards the end. Anyway, guys, we're just gonna do the on review score. Linda, let's get the on review score for Interview with the Vampire 1994.
1994 Interview with the Vampire receives a 3 out of 5.
And that's gonna do it for me, guys. My time's up. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. All 5 of those subscribers on YouTube now. Thank you for that. And honestly, guys, every little thing that you can do for this channel helps. If you're listening, just listen. If you want to subscribe, if you want to help us out on Patreon, that's cool too. Help us out on all of our socials. Do the liking, do the subscribing, do all the social media things. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And lastly, guys, don't forget, be safe, be kind, be you. Take care.